is the only way the country can attain economic growth. There has been controversy still around the president's trip since assuming office, and how these are presidential trips yield little or no results. Now we'll discuss more on this with a foreign policy expert in Kellys Kaunda. Good morning. Welcome to the Diamond Breakfast. Mr. Kaunda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right.
All right, let's get into this conversation. The Republican president did travel to Kenya through the invitation of the president there, Uhuru Kenyatta, and he came back quite quickly, obviously, to attend the first memorial for our first Republican president. But his trip to Kenya, what would you highlight and say is the significance of this trip? Because this made his 15th trip since being inaugurated. What could be the significance of this trip?
First, understand that we first signed our joint permanent commission with Kenya as far back as 1982, and there has been a steady increase in volumes in terms of trade between Kenya and Zambia. And according to the 2022 statistics, Zambia exported something in the range of $39.16 million worth of goods. This included, animals, animal products, live animals, copper byproducts like copper wires, vehicle-related, parts, textile-related stuff. And then Kenya, around the same period, also exported something in the region of $73.1 million. And you can see a trade deficit there, that we're importing more from Kenya than we are exporting. They're also exporting almost around the same things, like plastic products, electronic goods, textile stuff. Now, when the two presidents met on the MOU that they signed, the wording of the statement was, or their statements were that they've signed an MOU for purposes of removing tariff and non-tariff barriers, and that they wanted to sort out the bottlenecks in terms of a trade between the two countries. Now, those statements are diplomatic in nature. There are real trade disputes behind the scenes that take place between countries and between Zambia and Kenya. Zambia, for instance, has on occasion banned milk products or eggs and some items coming from Kenya because Zambia has accused Kenya sometimes of not meeting the rules of origin, which is that the products coming into Zambia under the COMESA rules of trade must be at least 35% of the original inputs coming from country of origin. So those have been trade spats. You remember that when the president was in Kenya, he said that he's surprised that sometimes Zambia imports Kenyan products through third parties. Now, when he said that, it was a diplomatic way of alluding to the real disputes that take place behind the scenes. Now, when you look at these figures, $39 million worth of exports to Kenya and $73 million worth of imports into, from Kenya into Zambia. Remember that these represent, manufacturing. They represent people's lives. They represent, taxes that contribute to the purchase of goods and services that we enjoy. So when you look at these figures and what they represent and the lives behind this and the goods and services that we purchase as a result of the taxes that come from this begins to tell you why it is important that presidents interact. Why should presidents interact instead of the ministers? It is because presidents enjoy a much wider mandate, so it's easy for them when they speak to use that wider mandate to resolve problems by issuing instructions to their respective ministers to resolve these issues. Because if it is left only at the level of ministers, the problem with that, you delay the resolution of disputes because ministers have to consult back with headquarters. The presidents don't have to do that. Presidents have to give instructions. Mm-hmm. So that is the importance of a trip like this, those trade volumes that you see represent people's lives. They represent the taxes we use to build our roads, to invest in security, in just about every public goods and services that you can think about. So that is the importance of this trip between Zambia and Kenya.
Now, despite all the positive things that you've highlighted coming in from the presidential trips, we've still continued to see sections of society condemning, the frequency and the cost of President Hichilema's travels. What is it about the president trips that keeps on generating this debate?
So if you look at the presidential trips from a political point of view, you'll be having those kind of arguments because politicians, they have self-interested, the agendas. When UPND was in the opposition, they accused Lungu of traveling often. Now they are in the opposition. They're now accusing UPND, which was accusing them of travels. They're even making, quantitative comparisons that, but this one traveled less, you're traveling so much. So if you make a political argument in terms of presidential travels, that's how the debate is going to come out. But there's another perspective to this. You need to understand that diplomacy has changed over time. There was a time in history when, because of non-advancement in terms of transport and communication technologies, that governments relied heavily on resident ambassadors to resolve issues and represent their interests. Hence the term plenipotentiary when you are referring to ambassadors or commissioners, because the term plenipotentiary means that that envoy has been given the power to make decisions on behalf of the sending authority. But then with the advancement of communication and transport technologies, we have now seen first a lot of more players on the diplomatic scene beyond just governments. We've seen more issues being dealt with at an international level, and we now see what is known as leader-centric diplomacy, where you see more of political leaders meeting to resolve a lot of issues. Now, the reason for this is because a lot of domestic issues have become mutually interconnected with international issues. I do not think that there's any local policy issue that doesn't have a connection with what is happening at an international level. Talk about the issues of poverty, resolving access to clean drinking water, issues of health, whatever issue that you can think about that we deal with at a local level, it has a counterpart at an international level in terms of international public policy. Think about, for instance, 17 SDGs. 17 SDGs deal with issues that are local, but they're being dealt with at an international level. So which means that domestic policy and international public policy, their lines have blurred. So when a president is traveling at an international level, he's very much dealing with issues that you're dealing with at the local level. And why do you want to? Why are leaders meeting so often? Like I've pointed out earlier, there are a number of issues at an international level today that require urgent resolution. So leaders are meeting because they have a much wider mandate than their ministers. So they can resolve issues fairly quickly, and they can commit countries to doing certain things that their ministers cannot resolve. So we're going to see increasingly presidents meeting. That's why you see a lot of summits at the African Union level. You see summits at the level of SADC, summits at the level of the United Nations, summits at the level of SADC, extraordinary summits, and so on and so forth. And the other reason is you want to have your president present at a number of these because you want as a country to contribute to whatever norms and conventions and treaties that are being formulated at an international level. You want to be part and parcel of formulating and affecting the international governance system so that you are not left out. So yes, we're going to be investing a lot in this. I think what would be important at the end of the day is that governments must invest sufficiently in their communication strategies so that citizens that do not really understand what is going on understand, so that we do not allow a situation where politicians become the authority over these issues.
Let's look at it from what happened again over the weekend. There was the memorials for the first and second Republican presidents of Zambia, which President Hakainde Hichilema did attend. Now let's look at the lives of both and what we can learn from their international relations, diplomatic relations. Our first Republican president, he was known for this, on top of being a pan-Africanist and interacting with leaders across the continent and even beyond. The second Republican president, even recently when he was out of power, he spoke about African leaders avoiding being what he called puppets of the West. Now, based off these two leaders, what can be learned in terms of their leader-centric approach towards diplomacy, and what our leaders now, including our current president, can be able to learn?
Dr. Kaunda's reputation across the globe, who is forever secure. He marshaled the political resources of this country, even from a moral point of view, to ensure that Southern Africa was liberated, to ensure that peoples of the world, wherever they may be, that were still under foreign rule, were liberated. By contributing ideas and his moral authority, Kaunda was exercising what now in diplomacy we call soft power. Soft power meaning the power of ideas, that you cannot allow one set of people being dominated by other people. And today the concept of soft power has gained ascendancy. And now it is being touted as the most important power, other than hard power that we've associated international relations with. For instance, people have touted America's position in the world from a point of view of its, military prowess or having huge economic resources. But that kind of hard power is no longer, is no longer as important as the soft power that Kaunda stood for. It's that soft power that Kaunda stood for that we now see countries like, South Africa being liberated, Zimbabwe being liberated, Mozambique being liberated, Namibia being liberated, and many other countries through the Nine Aligned movement. Talking about, Chiluba, Chiluba will go down Zambia's history as well as at the global level, particularly in Africa, as somebody that put his name forward at a time when it was not that popular to challenge the Kaunda government and regime, and led Zambia to re-engineering the country's political system from socialist and centralized the economic system to a multi-party system and market-driven economy. Now, providing leadership at a time like that was not a popular one. For those that grew up in the UNIP era, they knew how intimidating it was to, challenge UNIP or Kaunda. But Chiluba was courageous enough to put his name forward, as a leader. So whatever mistakes may have been made during Chiluba's time, I think we need to give credit to the fact that at the time when Zambia needed to make a major significant turning point, Chiluba stepped forward and offered his leadership. If you know the history of MMD and how it came into power, you will understand that, in fact, initially, there were different other names that were expected to provide leadership from Kaunda to the new dispensation. And that there were some people that lost courage, that they thought that Kaunda was going to tear into their political lives, and that we're going to lose the election, that MMD was going to lose this election. So it was courageous of Chiluba to put his name forward. And for me, I'll forever give him respect for that sort of courage.
All right.
Mr. Kaunda, thank you so much for coming through to the Diamond Breakfast. It's always a pleasure to host you and discuss these issues that are of national importance. That was Mr.
Thank you very
Kellys
much,
Kaunda,
guys, and take care.
who is our a foreign policy expert, and we're just discussing the impact of diplomatic trips. We do take a break. When we're back, we'll get straight into more local news as well as newspaper headlines. We'll be right back.